Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the English Learning Podcast. I'm your host, Jason, and joining me today is the amazing co-host, Julia. How are you doing, Julia?
I'm doing great, Jason. Super excited for today's episode. How about you?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks for asking. All right, listeners, today we have something special lined up for you. We're diving into the world of real talk, real English fluency. And if you've been working hard on your English, you've probably noticed that it's not just about learning grammar rules or memorizing vocabulary. It's also about speaking naturally, like a native speaker.
Exactly. It's about using real, everyday English that people actually speak. The phrases you hear in movies, at coffee shops, or on the street. That's what makes you sound fluent, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
We're going to break it all down for you today. How to speak more naturally in English, common mistakes that block fluency, and how to practice speaking confidently without worrying about being perfect. But before we get started, let's do a little warm-up. Julia, let me ask you, what's one common phrase or expression you use in English that makes you sound fluent?
Oh, I definitely say, "What's up?" It's a casual, natural way to ask how someone is, and you hear it all the time in conversations, right?
Exactly. It's one of those phrases that you can use in almost any informal situation. And that's the beauty of real talk. It's all about sounding natural and fitting in with the conversation, not just memorizing textbook phrases.
Right, Jason. So if you're learning English and you've ever felt like you're not quite there yet in terms of fluency, don't worry. We're here to help. We'll share some tips on how you can start speaking English in a more fluent, natural way today.
So, grab a seat, get comfortable, and let's dive into today's topic. Real talk, real English fluency. We're going to explore how you can sound more like a native speaker and how you can use real English in your daily conversations. Let's get started. All right, let's jump right into it. Why does real talk matter so much when it comes to improving your English fluency? Julia, what's your take on this?
Well, Jason, if you think about it, most of the English we learn in textbooks is pretty formal, right? We focus a lot on grammar rules and structured sentences, but when you listen to native speakers or even just everyday conversations, it's a whole different world.
That's so true. It's the kind of language you hear on the streets, in movies, or at the coffee shop. Phrases like, "What's up?" or "How's it going?" They're super casual and not something you'd find in a textbook.
Exactly. And that's why learning real talk is so important. If you only learn formal English, you might find yourself stuck when trying to have casual conversations with native speakers. You'll know the words, but you might not sound natural or confident.
Right. And let's not forget that real talk also helps you understand the culture. Language and culture are deeply connected. When you use real English, you're also tapping into the social context of the language. It's not just about words. It's about fitting in, connecting with people, and understanding the flow of a conversation.
Exactly. Think about slang, idioms, and expressions that native speakers use all the time. Things like, "no worries," or "I feel you." These are phrases that help you sound more natural and show you understand the culture, not just the language.
Exactly. And speaking of phrases, let's talk about a few that are commonly used in real conversations. For instance, "What's up?" or "How's everything going?" These aren't questions that expect a long answer. They're simply ways of checking in casually with someone. But learners might get confused and start overthinking. Should I answer with a complete sentence? Should I say, "Everything is fine"?
I see what you mean. The trick is, when someone asks, "What's up?" you don't have to give a long, detailed answer. A simple, "Not much, just relaxing," or "All good, how about you?" is perfect. It keeps the conversation flowing without overthinking it.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of real talk. It helps you speak more freely and comfortably. You can be confident in using these everyday phrases without feeling like you need to know every grammar rule or vocabulary word.
And think about it. When you start using real talk, people are going to notice. It shows you're not just focused on being correct, you're focused on being natural, which is what really makes you sound fluent.
That's right. And when you start using these casual expressions, it helps you build relationships too. People appreciate it when you speak their language, and it's a great way to connect on a deeper level, whether you're talking with friends or in a professional setting.
Absolutely. So, if you're listening right now and wondering, how can I start sounding more fluent in English? The answer is simple. Start practicing real talk. Use the phrases you hear every day, get comfortable with them, and don't be afraid to sound casual.
Exactly. And don't worry about being perfect. It's about being natural. And with practice, you'll get better and more confident. Okay, now that we've talked about why real talk matters, let's dive into something that's crucial for any language learner: fluency. Julia, when people hear the word fluency, they usually think it means speaking perfectly, right?
Yeah, and that's a pretty common misconception. A lot of learners believe that being fluent means you have to speak like a native speaker with perfect grammar, and you can never make a mistake. But that's not really what fluency is all about.
Exactly. Fluency is more about the ability to communicate smoothly and confidently. It's not about being perfect. It's about expressing yourself naturally, even if you make mistakes along the way. So, Julia, what do you think is the most important part of fluency?
For me, it's all about rhythm and confidence. You could know a ton of vocabulary or grammar rules, but if you're too nervous or hesitant when you speak, it can really slow you down. The key is to speak with a flow and not overthink every word you say.
Yeah, and that's why I always tell my students, don't focus too much on grammar in everyday conversations. Of course, grammar is important, but it's not the only thing that makes you sound fluent. If you're too focused on getting every sentence perfect, it can actually make you sound less natural.
Exactly. So many learners get caught up in trying to use complex sentences or perfect grammar, but in real conversations, native speakers often use simple sentences and contractions. Instead of worrying about whether your grammar is perfect, just focus on getting your message across and speaking confidently.
Right. And speaking of getting your message across, one thing that really helps with fluency is understanding the flow of the conversation. If you're aware of how a conversation is going, you'll know when to jump in, when to ask questions, and when to let the other person speak.
That's a really good point. It's all about the rhythm of the conversation. If you're constantly thinking about the words you're going to say next, you're not listening and responding naturally. You need to be able to listen and react in real time.
Exactly. And that's where listening practice becomes crucial. The more you listen to native speakers, whether it's in podcasts, movies, or everyday conversations, the more you start to pick up on the natural rhythm of the language. You start recognizing how people interact in real time, how they pause, how they use fillers like or you know, and how they respond quickly without stopping to think too much.
That's so true. And one of the best ways to improve that fluency is by mimicking real conversations. Let's say you're listening to a podcast or watching a show and someone says something like, "I don't know, it's just how it is." You can practice repeating that phrase aloud, paying attention to the rhythm and tone of how it's said. This will help you sound more natural when you use it yourself.
I love that. And let's not forget that fluency also comes with experience. The more you practice, the more comfortable you get with speaking. So, even if you make a mistake, don't worry. Just keep speaking and learning from it. It's the process that builds fluency.
Yes, and one thing I'd recommend is to start thinking in English. It sounds hard at first, but if you train your mind to think in English, it really helps you improve fluency. Instead of translating from your native language, just think about what you want to say in English and say it right away. The more you do this, the more fluent you'll become.
That's an awesome tip. It's all about immersion. The more you surround yourself with English, the more natural it becomes. And remember, fluency isn't about speaking perfectly. It's about feeling comfortable and confident in your ability to communicate.
Exactly. And the key to fluency is practice. Whether you're speaking with a friend, listening to a podcast, or even talking to yourself in English, every bit of practice helps you get closer to your goal of fluency.
So, for our listeners, don't stress about being perfect. Focus on speaking with confidence. Keep practicing, and over time, you'll notice your fluency improving. It's all about the flow of the conversation and getting comfortable with the language.
Right, Jason. Fluency isn't about perfection, it's about expression. So don't be afraid to speak and make mistakes along the way.
All right, now that we've talked about what fluency is and why real talk matters, let's move on to something really important: the common mistakes that block fluency. We all make mistakes when learning a language, but some habits can really slow down your progress. Julia, what do you think is one of the biggest mistakes learners make when trying to sound more fluent?
Oh, for sure. Overthinking every word. So many learners get caught up in making sure their grammar and vocabulary are perfect that they end up hesitating or pausing too much when speaking.
That's a huge one. And it's so understandable, right? We're taught from a young age to focus on accuracy. And then, when we get into real conversations, it feels uncomfortable to let go of that need for perfection.
Exactly. And this hesitation can make you sound less confident, even if you know exactly what you want to say. So the key here is to stop overthinking and just let the words flow. It's okay to make mistakes, but the goal is to communicate, not to be perfect.
Totally. Another common mistake I see is not using contractions. Native speakers use contractions all the time. You'll hear things like, I'm your didn't and can't, instead of saying, I am, you are did not, or cannot. It sounds more natural and fluid when you use contractions in your speech.
Yes, and a lot of English learners feel like they're being too casual or incorrect when they use contractions. But the reality is that they're an essential part of sounding fluent. In fact, not using contractions can actually make you sound more rigid and less natural.
Exactly. So, if you're not already using contractions, start incorporating them into your speech. It's a great way to make your English sound more natural.
Another big mistake is being afraid to use slang or informal expressions. A lot of learners are nervous about using slang because they think it might be too casual or inappropriate. But in reality, slang and informal expressions are a huge part of everyday conversation, and learning them can really boost your fluency.
That's right. I always tell my students, if you don't use slang or idiomatic expressions, you'll sound like a robot. It's these expressions that really make you sound like a native speaker. For example, when someone says, I'm feeling down, they're not just saying they're sad, they're using a common idiomatic expression.
Exactly. And think about phrases like, what's up? Or no worries. These kinds of expressions are everywhere in casual English, so don't be afraid to use them. They help you sound more approachable and fluent.
Right. But here's another mistake that often gets overlooked: using the wrong level of formality. In certain situations, you might be speaking with a colleague or in a professional setting, and you need to sound polite and formal. But in casual conversations with friends, you need to switch to a more relaxed style. Not adjusting your tone and formality can make you sound a bit stiff or out of place.
That's so true. For example, if you're at work and you say, hey, can you assist me with this project? It might sound a little too formal for the situation, but if you say, hey, can you help me with this project? It sounds much more natural.
Exactly. It's all about knowing when to be formal and when to relax your tone. Understanding the context of a conversation will help you speak more naturally and fluently.
And lastly, one big mistake is not practicing speaking enough. A lot of learners spend a lot of time studying grammar and vocabulary, but neglect speaking practice. You can't expect to become fluent if you're not actually speaking in real situations.
That's a big one, for sure. Speaking is the most important skill to develop if you want to sound fluent. Whether it's having a conversation with a friend, recording yourself, or even talking to yourself, every little bit of speaking practice helps you get closer to fluency.
Definitely. The more you practice, the more comfortable you'll become with using English naturally. So don't be afraid to speak, even if you're not perfect yet. Every conversation is a step towards fluency.
So, to recap, the biggest mistakes blocking fluency are overthinking every word, not using contractions, avoiding slang, not adjusting your formality, and not practicing speaking enough. But don't worry. These are all things you can work on with practice.
Exactly. Don't get discouraged by these mistakes. They're a part of the learning process. Just keep practicing and you'll see improvements in your fluency.
All right, Julia. We've covered some of the mistakes that block fluency. But now let's get into one of the most effective ways to improve: real-life conversations. Because let's be honest, all the grammar books in the world won't make you fluent unless you practice speaking in real situations, right?
Absolutely, Jason. Real-life conversations are the best way to practice fluency. The more you speak in natural, everyday settings, the more you'll start to get used to the rhythm of the language. And the best part? It helps you learn how people actually speak, not just how the textbook tells you to speak.
Exactly. And you don't need to be talking to a native speaker to practice. It's all about finding opportunities to speak in English as often as possible. For example, you can have conversations with fellow learners, online language partners, or even practice with a tutor. The important part is to just speak and make it part of your routine.
Right. And one of my favorite ways to practice is by joining language exchange programs or online platforms where you can speak with people who are also learning English. These are great because they give you the chance to practice conversation in a relaxed environment, and you're all there to support each other.
That's such a great idea. Plus, it takes the pressure off. You don't have to worry about being perfect. And since both people are learning, you can help each other out. But let's talk about something else. Do you think there's a difference between having a conversation with a stranger and speaking with a friend?
Definitely. Conversations with strangers can feel more formal or a bit more structured, but that's also a great way to practice fluency in real-life situations. When you're talking to a friend, you have the luxury of being more relaxed and casual, but with a stranger, you have to think more about how to express your ideas clearly and politely.
That's true. And sometimes conversations with strangers can be even more challenging. But that's a good thing, right? It pushes you to adapt to different speaking situations, and you learn to think on your feet.
Exactly. And even if the conversation is short, like ordering food at a restaurant or asking for directions, those small moments of speaking in real-life situations add up and really help with fluency.
You're absolutely right. It doesn't have to be a long conversation to make an impact. And there's something powerful about practicing English in real-world situations. It helps you feel more comfortable with everyday language and prepares you for when you're speaking in more formal situations or even in a job interview.
Yeah, and I think one thing people don't always realize is how much you can learn by simply listening in real-life conversations. You pick up new vocabulary, learn how to respond naturally, and notice how native speakers use different expressions.
That's a great point. Listening is just as important as speaking when it comes to fluency. If you're constantly exposing yourself to English through podcasts, TV shows, or even just paying attention to how people talk in public, you start to notice patterns, slang, and casual expressions you can use.
Totally. And I love that you mentioned podcasts earlier because they're such a great tool for fluency practice. You can listen to real conversations and even try to mimic what you hear. I know a lot of learners who listen to podcasts and then repeat what they've heard to practice their pronunciation and intonation.
I do that too. It's a great way to improve not just fluency, but also your confidence in speaking. And even if you can't have a conversation every day with a native speaker, you can still simulate real-life conversations through role-playing, or by recording yourself and listening to how you sound.
Exactly. The more you practice, the more you'll improve. So listeners, if you're not already practicing real conversations, try to find at least one opportunity every day to speak in English. Whether it's online, with a friend, or just practicing alone, just make sure you're consistently speaking and improving your fluency.
And remember, it doesn't have to be a big, intimidating conversation every time. Start small, ask for directions, talk about your day, or even make small talk with a colleague or a friend. Every bit of practice counts and will get you closer to fluency. Wow, Julia, I feel like we've covered some really important points today. We've talked about real talk, real fluency, and how to break through the barriers that slow down progress. Any final thoughts to wrap things up?
Absolutely, Jason. If there's one takeaway from today's episode, it's that fluency isn't about being perfect. It's about being confident, comfortable, and consistent. Real talk, real conversations, and real-life practice are the keys to unlocking fluency.
Exactly. And I hope our listeners now understand that it's okay to make mistakes, and that speaking naturally is the goal. The more you speak, the more comfortable you'll get, and the more confident you'll become in your English skills.
Definitely. So, to summarize what we've learned today, first, fluency is all about communication, not perfection. Second, breaking down your language learning into real-life conversations is the most effective way to practice. And third, make sure you're avoiding the common mistakes like overthinking, avoiding contractions, and not using enough real-world expressions.
That's right. And remember, fluency takes time. It's not something that happens overnight, but with consistent practice and the right mindset, it's totally achievable.
And speaking of practice, we encourage you to find as many opportunities as possible to speak in English every day. Whether it's with a friend, a language partner, or just practicing on your own, every conversation counts.
So, here's your action plan, listeners. Start incorporating more real talk into your daily routine. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Use contractions. Practice listening, and make the effort to speak as much as you can. And remember, every little bit of practice adds up.
That's right, Jason, and don't forget you've got this. Fluency is a journey, not a destination. So keep going, keep practicing, and most importantly, enjoy the process.
Exactly. So that's it for today's episode of the English Learning Podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time with more tips to help you become a fluent English speaker.